A Mother's View, Remembering Mary, the Mother of Jesus. Mary lived to protect her child, like all mothers do. She had the typical worries and fears we all face. She carried Jesus in her womb, gave birth to him, stared at him endlessly, and held him in her arms, just like any other mother. She had that same head over heels in love, overwhelming joy, surge of maternal love welling up inside her for her child. However, her feat was much more than our own. From the beginning of Jesus' life, Mary had to protect him not only from the common harm, but from King Herod and so many others. She had to rely solely on God to lead her through this journey and remember that her son was the true Son of God. She had to trust God with the child they shared. I tried to visualize her journey as the mother of Christ. Can you imagine her fear when so many strangers were coming to see her newborn? People she had never known. Though he was the Son of God, don't you know she had that maternal instinct to protect her precious child? Can you see her fleeing with her baby to protect him from an angry king, or searching for him frantically when he disappeared into the temple at only 12 years old? Can you hear her heart pounding with fear as she traveled a day's time to find him? Can you hear her tone as she scolded him for his adventure? Can you see her tripping and pushing through the crowds as her son carried his 100-pound cross through the dusty streets of Jerusalem while being beaten? Can you imagine her pain as she followed his every step to his predetermined death? I imagine the sight killed her. I imagine she never took her eyes off of him, not for a moment. I imagine she prayed loudly over and over throughout that most exhausting and gut-wrenching experience. I imagine she felt every ounce of Jesus' pain, longing to throw herself atop him, to protect him, to scream out at those that harmed her child. The fact that Jesus was the Son of God did not change the fact that he was Mary's child. Can you feel the pain and torment that must have run from her heart through every part of her being as she watched the soldiers mistreat him? Can you feel the overwhelming emotion she felt knowing her child was the chosen one? Proud, sad, honored, humbled, broken, deathly afraid? Can you see Jesus looking down to her from the cross with reassuring eyes, reminding her that this was not the end for him and that he would see her again? That he would meet her not as her son, but as her Savior? Can you imagine the pain it caused him to see such fear in his mother's eyes, the one who loved him more than any other human could? Can you imagine Mary's relief when Simon of Cyrene was able to carry the cross for him for just a short part of his journey? I think she probably thanked God for arranging that moment amidst the madness. I imagine the weight that was lifted off of Jesus and Mary in that moment. Now, can you imagine the 6 hours that seemed like a lifetime as she watched her son be brutally beaten and nailed to a cross? I wonder how many times his beautiful baby face crossed her mind, how she longed to pull him down and hold him in her arms, how she wished she could change the scene before her. Can you fathom the courage it took for her to turn her eyes up to Jesus on that cross as she watched helplessly? Can you even begin to think about the kind of devotion she had to our God to be so obedient during that time? I assume she sobbed and cried out loudly, shaking her fist and praying. Can you imagine her overwhelming emotion when Jesus abided by God's commandment to honor his mother and demanded John to care for her in his absence? How could he have ever thought of such in his situation? I wonder what she thought as darkness fell around them for 3 hours. Did she ever notice? Was she surprised when Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing"? What did she think when the earth began to tremble at the draw of his last breath? Was she too focused on his death to realize the world was quaking around her? Or was it a strong sense of relief that our God was present, mighty, and alive, angry? Was she in awe as Nicodemus and Joseph quietly and gently lowered her son from the cross? They say no words were uttered. They say she laid gently beside him, that they gently placed the nails beside her. Can you imagine her, filthy, tear-stained, trembling, exhausted, as she held his sacred body in her arms? The same child she held as a newborn, the same child she tucked into bed, the same child she spent her life loving lay as a human sacrifice in her arms. Some say she helped cleanse his body and that she softly removed the crown of thorns from his head, that she assessed his wounds and spilled tears over his body as she prepared him for burial, that his disciples and Mary Magdalene watched quietly. We may never know what took place in the series of events that led to the death of our Savior, but as mothers, as parents, we know for sure that Mary, the chosen mother, honored God and loved her child. What a glorious day it must have been when she was reunited with Jesus in heaven. As the Apostle Paul said to those who grieve over their loved ones, "We who are still alive will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air." I love imagining this moment for Mary and Jesus. If you have trouble fathoming the crucifixion, wrapping your mind around the life that was laid down for your own, maybe you should try thinking about it from a different perspective, one you can relate to, one like Mary's.